rain. It did rain.
Where did it rain?
In Bishop's Corner.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It missed us entirely. Us Southerners. So what we do, just to let you guys know and to let the audience who is watching now, what's happening is we have a series of websites that we have to populate. Jen Evans has to grab it for TV. Connecticut News Junkie has to grab it for statewide. And then we've got we've got one other statewide site and then several other local sites that asked to pick it up. So we're on more sites than ever. We're growing. The empire is growing. Right, Ronni? So
it is growing.
It is growing. We're taking the state by storm here. So people love the political discussion. So I think this is going to be an interesting broadcast.
So give me just. Oh, India said it rained at her house. I think we have a comment there already.
Okay, so that's center of. Okay, hi India. How are you? So
rain.
So we're being broadcast somewhere.
It did not rain at my house.
So anyway.
I got one more page to go, and then we're good to go.
No worries. And you got that list I sent you, Ronni. We didn't miss anybody, right?
I don't think so.
Okay. It's hard because when you have to do a population, it takes, in the beginning, it would take us 7, 8, 9 minutes to do all this, but now we know what we're doing. We've got
all right, I got everybody. We're good.
Awesome. Okay.
We are alive.
Fantastic. So, all right, welcome to this week's WeHa.com Roundtable. I am John Lyons, joined as always by Ronni Newton, who's the managing editor of WeHa.com. We welcome our viewing audience watching online, locally, on TV, and around the state on Connecticut News Junkies. So we do continue to grow the audience, and we welcome all of those in and around the area and the state watching the show. Today, Ronni and I welcome the West Hartford Town Clerk, Essie Labrot, along with both registrars of voters for the town of West Hartford, Beth Kyle and Patrice Peterson. This week, we are going to be discussing mail-in voting, including who's on the local ballots, how mail-in voting works, and what safety protocols are being put in place for those who are going to vote in person, which is obviously still an option. So, Ronni, let's kick it off like we always do. What is in your reporter's notebook?
A lot of things. Actually, there's so much in my reporter's notebook that I need to go to Staples and buy some more reporter's notebooks because I have completely run out of paper. But so the biggest topic that we're talking about in West Hartford right now, I believe, is the return to school program, the blueprint that the superintendent, Tom Moore, sent out to all school families today. The Board of Education had a peek at it Tuesday night in a meeting that lasted 4 minutes short of 4 hours. So it was a very long discussion. There were some other things that they talked about it as well, but the reopening plan was really the key part of it. And it is a huge document, a very in-depth and very, in my opinion, well thought out document that was put together in just 3 weeks. And there's just the incredible amount of work that went into that. It's just astounding. But what it is a plan for in-person schooling with understanding that some students will not be in school, will be doing remote learning during that time. There's a hybrid plan where basically half the students will be in the classroom and the other half will be learning at home, but they've organized that so that the curriculum is continuous. So if you're in school one week and at home the next week, everybody's still going to be at the same point in their studies in their particular classes. And then there is a complete plan for everybody to do remote learning, and that program will be the same as what the remote learning plan is for those who are essentially being homeschooled while other students are in school. Which one of those ends up being the reality come September 8th, which is the new date that West Hartford students are going to be returning to school, is not up to the town of West Hartford. It's not up to the superintendent of schools. It's not up to the Board of Education. It's not up to the mayor or the town manager. It is up to the state. So it's really going to depend on what the metrics for COVID-19 look like in the state in the next couple of weeks. As of today, yesterday, our positivity rate bounced up a little bit to just over 1%. Today, there were a greater number of tests done, and the rate is back down at, I think, 0.7%, although there were a few more hospitalizations. So it's bouncing around a little bit, but staying in a really pretty low level. And Tom Moore actually said to me, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say this, but he said to me last week, if we're not able to go back to school in Connecticut, really nowhere in the country should anybody be going back to school, because our numbers look better than any other state in this country. So, I mean, it remains to be seen. And the governor has indicated that the first week of August or so is when they're going to make the decision, because there really does need to be time to plan. They need to hire staff. They really need to be ready to implement a program within a very short time frame. So I know people are going to have a lot of questions. I wrote 4,500 words on the topic, and that was a summary. There are a lot of questions. The document that was put out today is what Tom called a living document, and there's FAQs at the end of it. And anybody who submits questions, where people are submitting a lot of questions about the same topic, that's going to be added to the document. So that's kind of the big topic. The legislature is back for special session today. They started meeting this morning. It's going to be a pretty long session. The House did approve telehealth to continue through, I believe it's March 31st. I'm not positive of that date. Don't quote me on that. But there are some other major topics that they're taking up. I'm not really sure of the status of any of those, but look for some coverage. Both through our affiliation with CT News Junkie at some point tomorrow, as well as other local and regional media will, of course, be reporting on what's going on at the Capitol. So those are the big topics.
Well, good. And we are working on getting somebody from the governor's office on one of our future broadcasts. And there's so much to ask, both legislatively and with respect to COVID and schools. And back to the school, I did end up watching the rebroadcast of that meeting. I cheated. I put it on 1.25 speed, so I knocked it out in about 3 hours. But lest anybody think Tom Moore isn't on top of this, you're not paying attention. Tom is putting a lot of faith in his staff. His staff is nothing short of fantastic, and they are all over it. And the plan is worth reading. It's 53 pages. Ronni, do you remember?
It is. It's actually 44 pages.
Oh, is it 44? Okay.
But it is 44 very densely populated pages.
Yeah.
But there's some really interesting, the schedules that the students would follow are detailed there, and they've pivoted the high school schedules, and at least for the upcoming year, to be block scheduling. So that'll minimize the transitions between classes. Each class period will be longer. You'll have, English, for example, just on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the next week it would be Tuesday, Thursday. It's an AB week. So it's all going to, no matter what it is, it's going to be a different year. It's going to take some getting used to. But they have said that West Hartford will continue to distinguish themselves with whatever plan goes forward, and will be a model that they believe other districts throughout the state and country will want to emulate.
Wouldn't surprise me if that happened. So great, Ronni. Thank you for the recap. Great notes. Essie Labrot, who is on audio only, so you don't see her up here, but she is on. Essie, we've got a big primary coming up, and then obviously an even bigger election coming up in November. Talk to us about your role. What does the town clerk do with respect to these types of elections?
Okay, hello. Thanks for having me on. The town clerk manages a lot of aspects of elections, everything from municipal offices and vacancies to setting up the ballot for every election, and it involves party endorsements, legal notices, nominating petitions, candidate certifications, even candidate finance statements, and even the 150 plus justices of the peace that will be getting appointed in January of this year. So we do a lot of the setup, the certifying, and then we have the absentee ballot process that we are responsible for. And at the end of the election, we certify the results of the election, and notify the Secretary of State of the winners, obviously, and maintain all the official records for that whole election.
It sounds like a huge responsibility.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I'm looking at the list of forms we have, and there's probably 44 of them right now that, because they're for different parties, they're for different town committees, they're for justices of the peace. So there's all these different offices. There's municipal offices, state offices, and then the in-betweens. We also manage the boards and commissions. So that's another piece where my office is very involved. All those appointments as well.
All righty. Well, thank you for that. I think it was good to start with a little bit of introduction of that nature, because I think a lot of people watching maybe doesn't know exactly what a town clerk does or what a registrar does. So I'm going to pivot to both Beth and Patrice and ask you guys to kind of each talk a little bit about what your roles and responsibilities are with respect to elections.
Why don't you start, Beth?
Okay. Thanks for having us today. I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of good information for us to share with the public out there. As registrars, I'm going to speak specifically to the election, since that's what we're here about. There's a lot of stuff that we do behind the scenes, but with regard to the actual election, we hire all of the poll workers. We maintain the polling places. There are 9. We train the poll workers. We make sure that all of our rolls, which is the active list of voters, is up to date as best we possibly can, so that people who've moved out of state are no longer on the list, people who've passed away. We do a canvass to make sure that people who haven't voted in a long time still are actually living in the area. We are responsible this time for the safety and the capacity at all the polling locations, which has been a massive undertaking, of course. And then at the after the election is over, we are responsible, of course, throughout the day for tallying all of the ballots as the people vote them. And then we tally all of the absentee ballots and present those numbers to the town clerk, submit them into the Secretary of State through a system, an online system. And then, as Essie said, she presents the final numbers to the Secretary of the State. Patrice, please fill in anything that I forgot.
You pretty much covered it. I think that the thing that we're really concerned about this time is making sure that the polling places are we're responsible for making sure that they're physically set up correctly and according to CDC and public health guidelines. And then, of course, managing the massive increase in absentee ballots that we're expecting is an enormous part of our job, because Essie gets them in, but we're the ones that have to open them all up and get them all counted and make sure that every vote is counted. And that, I would say, Beth and I, our major function when it comes to an election is to make sure that every ballot is counted.
There we go. That was a pretty key moment, and we lost.
It's what? Yeah.
Pretty key moment. Little cliffhanger there. Every ballot is
counted.
So anyway, I think she did say every ballot is counted, and we want to make sure that everybody knows that every ballot is counted. So, Beth, Patrice, thank you. What we're going to do now is, and this is tough, but just the way the platform works, I'm going to take Ronni and I out. And Beth, we're going to have you start with the GOP ballot. We're going to put the ballot up, and we're going to ask you to walk through the candidates, how to vote, that sort of thing. And then we're going to do the same for Patrice. So hang tight. I've got a little bit of managing to do here, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Ronni, we'll say goodbye to you. And John, we'll say goodbye to you next, if I can find you. There we go. Okay, fire away.
Okay, so this is what the ballot will look like for the Republican primary on August 11th. You can only vote in the primary if you are registered either as a Republican or a Democrat. There will be 2 separate sections. You will, when you go into the location, you will look towards the area. If you're a Republican, make sure you go to that side, because you cannot be handed, you will not be found in the books that are Democrat books. So then you will see on the ballot is Donald Trump, who is the endorsed candidate, Rocky De La Fuente, who petitioned to get on the ballot. That's for president. And then for representative in Congress is Mary Fay, who is the Republican endorsed candidate for the 1st District. And then Jim Griffin, who petitioned to get on the ballot.
And bear with me, we're just bringing Ronni back up. Okay, super. And Patrice, hang tight. We're going to have you back up in a minute. So a couple questions on the ballot. Number one, so this is not Rocky's first run at president in the state. I've seen him on at least 2 or 3 ballots. Am I right?
He, I believe, was on the ballot at the last presidential, but I don't think he was running as a Republican at that time.
He wasn't. Trump was the endorsed candidate, but he ran, I'm not sure what party he ran, whether it was conservative or a Tea Party or whatever, but I know I've seen his name on the presidential in the past. So Rocky, keep fighting. We love the underdog. Not that I'm taking any political sides anywhere here, but it's nice to see a name on a ballot. Ronni, any questions before I trade out?
No, I have some general questions that I'll bring up once we look at the other ballot, but not specifically.
Well, so I will say this: if you want to, whoops, let me get rid of that. Hang on, it's going to take me a moment to hold on. There we go. It's going to take me a moment to bring up the other media here. So if you want to ask.
So while you're doing that, I do see a question in there that
about the
in the comments.
Yep.
Do you mind if I speak to that while you're doing that? Okay.
While you're doing that,
so the ballots are not in Braille, but what we do have is an accessible system that is touchscreen, that has a touchpad that is Braille accessible. So that IVS machine is at every polling location. If you are to come to the polls, you can utilize that system. That's been in existence for a few years now. It helps people who are visually impaired, who cannot hear, because, and anyone who has any issues with filling out a ballot. Anyone can actually use that machine to vote, but its primary purpose is to help people who have some sort of issue, disability issue. With regard to the ballots that are going to be mailed, absentee ballots that will be mailed out, I do believe there is a conversation between the Federation for the Blind, I'm not sure if I'm getting the name of that right, and the Secretary of the State right now about what they're going to do to provide access for people who are blind.
And anybody at a polling location at any time can ask for help. There are people there to offer assistance, correct?
Absolutely, 100%.
Terrific. Okay, we're going to go through the same exercise now with Patrice. The only little difference here is with the Democratic Party, there are 3 districts in play on, not in play, but for a state representative, and the 20th district is having an election this year. So we've got 2 ballots to go through.
John, just to be clear, there are 3 districts for all parties, but there is a primary only in the 20th.
I'm sorry, I should have been clear.
Only for 20th district.
The districts are identical for both GOP and Democrat, but only in the 20th there's a primary for the Democrat. So we're going to bring that up. So Beth, I'm going to take you down here for a second, okay?
Somebody's got a phone ringing and needs to
Yeah, that's my phone. Sorry about that. That's my brother-in-law.
Let me make sure we got the right one up. All right, so the first one, we'll do this one first. And Ronni, I'm going to take you and I down. Give it a moment. And then Patrice, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and talk about this.
Okay, this is the ballot that is going to be used if you vote at King Philip, Bristow, Town Hall, Sedgwick, Rayburn, or Hall. And it is the only race that is going on is the nomination for the Democratic candidate for president. So you'll just see that on one side, with the Republican, it was 2 sides, but on this, it's just 1 side. And we ask that the little oval that's in the top left-hand corner, that you fill that out completely. We're going to have disposable pens available, or one-time use pens, or you can bring your own pen, but we ask that you fill that little oval out completely. So it's for those 6 districts, that's just that one one candidate that you're going to be voting for. Okay, so that's the same one. We just need the one for the 20th.
All right, hang tight here. I've got to get this corrected. So let me hide that and just make this easy. We'll delete that. I believe this is it. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, hang tight. I'm going to take Ronni me out again.
Okay. All right, so this one shows that on the top right-hand side, you will see that it says Assembly District 20. So that means if you vote at the new vote polling location for Charter Oak International Academy, which we'll talk about more in depth in a few minutes, or Walcott School or Conard High School, you're the only 3 polling places where this ballot will be available because the state representative position is an open position. And there are 2 Democrats that are running for that office, the endorsed candidate Sherry Haller, and then Kate Farrar is the other candidate who was running and petitioned to run for that office. So you will be only if you're in that district. So if you get an absentee ballot, and your friend got one and it looks different, make sure that you look for that marking on the top right that you are actually in the 20th district. If you're not in the 20th district, then you are not going to get this ballot. So I want people to understand that the Democrats in town are going to get 2 different ballots, depending upon where you live.
Okay, that's terrific. I'm going to take that down and do it. And who am I forgetting? I'm forgetting Beth. Where's Beth? Okay, good with her. Beth, where are you? There you are. Okay, good. We got that squared away. We're kind of
getting a little dizzy here.
I'll let it go for now. So, all right. So, talking about the ballot, it's hard because I took the ballot down. But so what? Okay, a couple of things people are going to ask is, hey, and I, having worked at a polling location in the past, we run into it. In fact, I worked the polling location at Sedgwick when Jillian Gilchrist was primarying Fleischman, and the Sedgwick, for those of you that don't know, is not part of the 18th district. It's part of the 19th district. We probably had 50 or 60 people come in throughout the day. How come I can't vote for Jillian? So, and what can further that confusion is signs. We have loads of signs in our neighborhood for the 2 candidates who are running for the 20th. We're the 19th. So I think people watching need to, maybe this isn't a question, but more of a statement, just need to understand that maybe just because you see a sign somewhere or you're friends with somebody, just double check that you're actually voting in the district. Otherwise, you're not going to see the name on the ballot. Don't worry, nothing untoward happening. I've been through it. But so we run into that. So, but the question I have for you is, we've got Tulsi Gabbard, we've got Bernie Sanders on the ballot. All we hear on the news is, hey, Joe Biden's the presumptive nominee. Folks are asking, why are those 2 names still on the ballot?
Well, I can answer that. The candidates, according to Connecticut statute, and this is also on the Republican side for Rocky, is that the candidate themselves would have to remove their names from contention. So even though they are no longer in the race, like Senator Sanders is no longer in the race, he would have to tell the Secretary of State that he no longer wants to have his name on the ballot. Secretary of State has reached out a number of times to both Rocky DeFuentes and Senator Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, and they have been very, very clear that they want their names on the ballot. So they've not removed it. So we're having a primary.
It's interesting because unfortunately, I'd have to think there's a tremendous cost. Now, obviously, the 20th is the 20th, but there is a cost to having these primaries.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
One word answer. Yes. So that's unfortunate because I think every town's budget's obviously very strained right now. Now I've got, and Ronni, I don't mean to be dominating here, but just I'm seeing questions that I know the answers to, and I know that the 2 registrars or Essie can weigh in. And I believe this requires a constitutional change, but we got a question from Dennis Swanton. If everyone wants this, why can't we get the legislature to pass vote by mail instead of an executive order? It's not a function of the legislature. Am I correct on that or not?
Well, it's a pretty complicated
Yeah.
issue, and Essie probably can speak to it as well. But what's happened for absentee ballot voting for this particular primary is that we're still in a state of emergency declared by the governor back in March, and that runs through September 8th or 9th. And what he did in order to expand the ability of people to vote by absentee ballot is changed or expanded what being sick meant. So, as according to the statute and according to the Constitution, there are very specific reasons when you can vote by absentee ballot. You have to be out of the voting district for the entire day. And that doesn't mean that you're working a long day. It means you are gone all day during the time that the polls are open. Or you have to be sick or in the military service, or it has to be against your religion to go to the polls that day. If it were, like, for example, a high holiday and you couldn't use any means of transportation to go anywhere or take any other action. So the reasons are very specific, and if you violate them, it's a felony. So it's a serious problem to vote by absentee ballot when you're not authorized to. I'm sure people do it, but you're not supposed to. So what the governor did, because of the continuing pandemic, and even though the primary was pushed ahead twice, he changed the definition of being sick to where there is sickness in the community. So anybody who's worried about going to the polls because of COVID-19 has the right to vote by absentee ballot according to executive order, for this particular election, this particular primary only. The governor's executive order expires when the state of emergency expires, so it doesn't encompass the November election, the November 3rd election. I should remember that date. One of the things that the legislature is taking up in their special session, which is going on right now, is whether or not the expanded absentee balloting can be included for the November election. The voting in the primary this way is a little bit of a pilot program, maybe, so to speak, because it is going to see how the process goes. There are a lot fewer people voting in the primary than there would be in the general election, and I'm sure that the registrars and Essie will have a lot to say about the challenge it will be to deal with a huge number of absentee ballots in November. But in just even trying to figure out the processes. So the Secretary of State has, through a mailing house, sent absentee ballots to all registered Republicans and Democrats in the state. And those have been mailed out. And as the applications are filled out and sent back in, the actual ballots are being sent out. And that began this week. In order to change the state constitution, and I'm not going to try to remember this off the top of my head, but it is a very complicated process that requires a certain percentage of the legislature to approve it to be on the ballot, and then it has to be voted on by the general public.
Yeah, it takes 2 election cycles to do it, if it can be.
Right. So but there, for the November election, it can be expanded the same way it was for the primary by the legislature. At least that's my understanding of it.
Essie, you want to weigh in, Essie?
Boy, you got that right, Ronni. You're
all right.
Very good.
I've spent a lot of time talking to Corporation Counsel.
That's interesting.
Dodge about it.
A bit of history. West Hartford, for some reason, has been one of the highest in absentee ballots for every single election. We're second only to Stamford, who has 75,000 voters. We only have, 40,000 voters? And so, for example, in a regular election, we would do 5,000 absentee ballots. So are you telling me that everyone that filled out that application is out of town during all hours of voting or is ill? I mean, I wonder that sometimes, but anyway, that you did a good background on that.
Beth,
Thank you.
Please, you want to weigh in?
I do want to add a couple of things. One is you can also, if you're an election worker, you also are legally allowed to vote absentee. So I didn't want our poll workers to panic and hear that that's something that we've been telling them to do. There is a checkbox for that. If you're an election official, if you're working at the polls, you're also always, under normal circumstances, also allowed to vote absentee. There is a challenge with regard to processing these ballots. I know that there were some challenges with people who may have received absentee ballot applications for people who did not live at those residences anymore. I think a couple of people had that issue. That would be because someone had moved and did not inform the Registrar of Voters office that they had moved, and they have to do that in writing. We use the NCOA, which is the National Change of Address. We subscribe to that. We pay for that. That's something that is supported by the Secretary of State for us to utilize that. And if that does not catch them, if they have not notified the post office, or if they are moving to a state that does not subscribe to something called ERIC, ERIC, like the boy's name, is an abbreviation for a system that has an interface with other states. I believe only 40 some odd states, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, are involved in that right now. And those states will inform us if someone has registered in their town and they used to be registered in our town. And then we take them off of our records. But if there's no other way for us to know unless we are informed in one of those ways, and therefore you may have gotten an application mailed to there. Very similar to if someone passed away. We do searches consistently of obituaries, of death records in the town of West Hartford. If someone unfortunately passed away outside of the town, but they were registered in the town, sometimes that is difficult for us to find out. But we do search the best we can. We can't just take someone off because their neighbor says that they passed away. You can imagine that that would be something we would not want to do. Right. We don't want to take someone off the rolls just because they said they don't live here anymore. We need proof of that. So, I mean, that's something that I did want to kind of bring up right out of the gate because we have gotten a lot of questions about that. The reality is on that application, if you fill it out for someone else, that's a felony. So you should not be filling it out for anyone else. You should be filling it out for yourself. And, it is a good idea for you to call us and let us know that you received one and that person is no longer living there or that person passed away, because we can send them a canvas letter. And when they do not return it, that is a legal way for us to also take them off of the rolls. So that is something that has come up with regard to those absentee ballot applications being mailed to everyone in the state. You would not have had that happen to you in the past because you would have had to download the absentee ballot application on your own, or you would have had to request a ballot yourself. So for the first time, them being sent out to everyone, that's when that happened.
Okay, so we've kind of, which is fine. We've jumped a couple of topics, which is good. I will work our way back, but we're on mail-in balloting at this point. So let's drill down on that. So Beth and Patrice, maybe Patrice, if you want to go with this, talk to us about what, as a resident, like, we received our notifications. I don't think they're the actual ballots, but the notifications. Next time I make bills, we'll pull them out, and then the
applications.
Walk us through, Patrice, what is the process? What can people expect to see?
Well, hopefully, if you are a registered Democrat or Republican, you have received your application to vote absentee if you wish. And you need to fill that out completely, sign it, and get it back to the to town hall, to the clerk's office. And that can be done either through the U.S. Postal Service or there are ballot boxes that look like mailboxes at the entrance of town hall. The entrance is by the parking lot. There's 2 of them. They're boldly marked. You can't miss them. And so you could drop them in there or you can mail them in. Once they come in, they are process through, there's a process that Essie's office goes through, and it goes into the state database that all of us have responsibility for. And then the Secretary of State has contracted with a mail house who, this is what they do across the country. They do it in other states as well. And they are responsible for then they get the database for the addresses and the names of the people who have applied to vote absentee, and they are mailing the correct ballots out. Those ballots went out on Tuesday, so we should start to see them. We're getting a ton of phone calls from people saying, I haven't gotten my ballot yet. Well, everybody's ballot got mailed out on Tuesday. So you can imagine that the Postal Service is a little backed up on this. So we should be seeing them in people's mailboxes in the next couple of days. They need to fill that out. And I think Essie, she's going to help me walk through exactly filling that out, because it is a little bit complicated. And I know that there were some things that she wanted to talk about. I have the props since she's by audio. So
are you able to email me a picture? Because I can put it up. I can put it up and show it to everybody. If you can't,
I'd have to take the picture and yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. So
can I just add a few things?
Sure.
You did an excellent job. We are still getting applications in.
Oh, yes.
And it's very important. People ask about the deadline to get the application in, and I would say do it now, because we have to mail that ballot, and it does take time. It isn't an overnight situation. So by the time you get your application into us, we turn it over usually within 24 hours. It goes through the mail house, and then the mail house sends out that ballot. As time goes on, that time frame is going to get narrower. So please, if you have an application that you haven't filled out yet, please mail it in, drop it in the Dropbox at Town Hall. If you need an application because either you're a newly registered voter or you just moved to town, or for whatever reason you don't have that application, you can download it from our website and fill it out then and send it in. We have been getting a number of applications in from unaffiliated voters. So if you do not get a ballot, the first thing you want to do, or if you did not get an application, check your voter registration status. You can do it online. Make sure that you are a Democrat or Republican. If you're not, you didn't get an application, and you would have to change your party affiliation in order to vote either in the Democratic or Republican primary.
On the
Essie,
Secretary of State, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask for clarification. Is it too late to change your affiliation?
No.
And then also, what if you are, like my kids, for instance, are still registered up at UConn? Can they change their address because now they both live in West Hartford?
They should change their address. But in order to change your address, you do need to fill out a whole new voter registration card. And on the top line, you have a choice of why you're filling out a new card, and you would cross off change of address. The changing of parties is a little bit complicated. If you are an unaffiliated voter, you have until August 6th to change to a Democrat or a Republican, and you need to, again, you fill out a brand new registration form, you check off the box that says change party, and then you can do that. In Connecticut, it's a little bit weird because a lot of people, they call us and they say, well, I'm an independent voter, and so I want to change my party. Well, in Connecticut, independent is different than unaffiliated. Unaffiliated is you do not belong to any party at all. And in Connecticut, independent is an actual party. So there is some distinction there. It is too late if you are a Republican who wants to become a Democrat, or a Democrat who wants to be Republican, or if you want to switch from any of the other parties. That there's a 90-day wait period, and we're within that 90 days. So it's too late to do that. But the unaffiliated voters, they can change parties. And if you go to the Secretary of State's website, it is the link that is My Vote CT that you would check. You could look up and find out what you're registered as.
myvote.ct.
My vote CT, period. No dot in there. Yeah.
So
You can also register. Oh, I'm sorry. You can also register online. You don't have to fill in a card physically because, of course, right now town hall is not open to the public. But you can register. You can change your address online as well, and you can change your party online as well.
Okay, what should somebody do? I know you touched on this, Beth, but just now that we're drilling down on this, hypothetically, I receive one for somebody who lived in my house previously. If I write they moved and mail it back in, is that good enough? Or what actions should I take? What are my options?
So you can call us in our office and let us know, or email Patrice or I and let us know this is the name of the person, this is the address, they no longer live here. Then we will send a letter out again to the address to try and get confirmation that they no longer live there. But it is good to notify somebody that is the case, because there's no other way for us to know. So yeah, I wanted people to know that in the beginning, because that's going to happen with the applications, not the ballots.
Okay, and we have a question from one of our viewers saying the turnout for primaries typically is very light relative to a general or a midterm election. Was there any consideration of that? I personally think there's going to be heavy turnout for the 20th based on what I'm hearing and seeing, and Lord knows the amount of signs around town. But was there any discussion of that? Well, turnout will be light enough. We don't have to do mail-in. Was there any discussion of that?
So that was not a decision that was made by us at all. That was at the Secretary of State's level. Even when the decision came for a Republican, I'll say on the Republican side, whether there should actually be a primary. And this was, of course, now back in April, before decision was made in March, before COVID came around. The decision was made that yes, Rocky De La Fuente had enough name recognition in the town and the state to be able to qualify for being on the ballot. So that decision was made by the Secretary of State, which is why there is a Republican primary.
Gotcha.
With regard to could we just social distance or what have you, that's not a choice that we got to make. There will, of course, be severely strict social distancing in place at the polls, and I know we're going to talk about that later. But with regard for the decision, that came down from the Secretary of State's office, and on top of that, it came down from the governor.
Patrice, any thoughts?
No, Beth covered it very well. We have been planning from back in February that this was going to be like any other election. So we are planning for full turnout, both at the polls and with absentee. So we're not distinguishing this from any other election at this point.
All right, Essie.
So wait,
I've got some
news.
Research on this, and in 2016, there were 12,660 voters in West Hartford that voted in the presidential preference primaries. Right now, my office has processed 9,108 applications.
Wow.
So I'm thinking that there will be more people voting by mail and far less people going to the polls.
Wow, that's a big number. And hot off the presses, the state house has, the state house has passed the expanded absentee balloting for the November election that just happened. The vote was 144 to 2. So that's
I'd like to know who the two are.
I don't. All I know is they were 2 Republicans who voted against it, but it is 144 to 2. That's a huge, overwhelming majority voting in favor of allowing the expanded absentee balloting in November. So it looks like whatever we'll be talking about, provided that the Senate does the same thing and the governor signs it, which if it passes, I'm sure the governor will sign it. We'll be talking about the same thing for the November election, and so that will be a huge number of ballots to deal with.
You want to watch the roundtable every week because we have the latest breaking news, as Ronni just demonstrated. WeHa.com. Keep watching these roundtables. So, and it really, all kidding aside, it sounds like it was very much bipartisan and just two people dug in. But that is certainly nowhere near the ratio of Democrats to Republicans in the House. So, good news. And Ronni, thanks for breaking that news for us. So next topic here, let's talk about in person. As long as we're talking about the actual voting process, what are some of the safety protocols? What for somebody who's going to vote in person? I think I may vote in person. What are we doing to ensure their safety? What's different? What's different this time around?
Everything is going to look different this time around. The polling places will be the same, but for one, we've actually moved one of the polling places from Elmwood Community Center, which is the 4th district, to Charter Oak International Academy, which is one of the elementary schools, the one that has just been completely redesigned, and that's at 425 Oakwood Avenue. The primary reason that we did that at this time is because it has a lot more room for social distancing. There are some requirements that we have to follow as directed by the Secretary of State. And certainly social distancing is one of the primary concerns for us. So in a smaller space, we had a problem with the voting booths being too close to each other, not having the poll workers be too close to each other. So we moved that to that space, and knowing, unfortunately, that COVID, or thinking that it may be around for a longer time than just this election, we're going to keep it there permanently. It will not go back to Elmwood Community Center. It will permanently be at Charter Oak. So that's one difference. Other than that, all of the other polls are the same. We are going to have what we're calling capacity monitors at the entrance and exit of the polls, just like at the supermarkets and the stores, where they have someone with a clicker letting you know how many people are inside, and we'll have somebody on the other end with a walkie-talkie or radio letting know how many people are coming out, because we're going to have a different entrance and exit, so there are no bottlenecks for people coming in. If there winds up being a line outside, it will be taped off, just like you see at the supermarkets. All of the poll workers inside will have a PPE. They will have masks, face shields. There will be a sneeze guard, plexiglass in between them and the voter when the voter hands their identification to them to look through the plexiglass. Each voter will get a newly sterilized pen for them to use. They must wear face masks. If they do not have a face mask will be provided for them by us. There will be hand sanitizer stations on the way in and on the way out. You will, in the past, we had moved to a system of, once you check in, you get one of those little lottery tickets, like a raffle ticket, in order for you to go get your ballot from the ballot clerk, so that we knew that you had checked in. It was a really good checks and balance system. We've eliminated that simply because we don't want to be handing people things. And we've actually combined the role of checker and ballot clerk to be one person. So you will check in with one person, and you will also get your ballot from the same person. There will be one person who's a Democrat and one person who's a Republican on different sections of the room, because you will have to go to the line that applies to you. We have really limited the amount of people working at the polls for the purpose of limiting bodies in there. We want fewer people in there, so it's less risk to the poll workers and the voters. Once you get your ballot, you will go to a newly cleaned polling booth location that has been cleaned in between each time that someone votes there. We are cleaning it and giving it time to dry. And then you will vote with your pen. You will walk over to the tabulator where you slide your ballot in, and then you will, we're not having stickers. That's really probably going to be the part that nobody is going to be excited about. But this time we're not having the stickers. The issues were, until we figure out a way to safely do that, we are not having the stickers, unfortunately, but you will have a tabulator tender there, as always, who again is dressed in PPE to assist you from 3 feet away if you need it. They will be standing a little bit, they have to stand 3 feet away to kind of monitor the machine, but once again, they'll be in PPE. And then as you leave, your pen will be dropped into a bucket that we will then sanitize all of those pens, so we can make sure that the pens are sanitized each time. There will be a hand sanitizer station on the way out, and then you will go out a different way than you came in. So there will be an entrance and an exit, and that will be at each polling location. Patrice, you want to speak a little bit about some of the other stuff that we're dealing with there?
Oh, Patrice, you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute. Hang on. I got you. There we go. Okay, we're good. Whoop, nope.
All right. There's three kind of changes that we have made, and Beth really emphasized all three of them. That is the role of the poll worker, which has changed, and we're making sure that they're in the proper PPE, and the environment, which is going to be very, very carefully cleaned and monitored throughout the day, and then deeply cleaned afterwards by people who work for the town. And then also the actual voter. So I do want to emphasize that the voter does have a role in this, in making sure that we're going to be following the guidelines from CDC, from the executive orders, that you really do need to be wearing a mask, and that we do not want people in the polling location without a mask on. That we are, there's enough people that are going to be around that we want to make sure that we keep the voters safe as well. So the voter has a responsibility in this, in terms of being respectful of the 6 feet limit, the number of people in a polling place at one given time, that the one-use pen, you're welcome to bring your own pen, and that the face mask is there, and that you wash your hands coming in and then leaving. So I think that that's an important part, because it's not just us that are responsible for keeping each other safe.
Essie, anything to add?
I would like to talk about filling out your ballot and mailing it back or dropping it in the drop box. Every election, we end up with ballots that are not counted because they are returned too late to our office, and that's really sad. So please get your ballot back as soon as possible. Patrice is going to hold up what you're going to put your ballot in terms of the envelopes, because one of the other reasons that ballots are rejected is because the envelope is not signed. So there is a spot on that envelope for your signature. Please make sure you sign that after you fill out your ballot and put it in that envelope. Another reason that ballots are rejected is that some people, it's very cute, husband and wife want to put their ballots in one envelope. Well, guess what? Both won't be counted. Because
that's a big deal.
Ballot, it's a big deal.
People are going to want to save postage or paper and feel like they're doing the right thing for the environment.
Right. But each ballot has an identifying number, and that's how we keep track. And we run reports on a daily basis where we're matching the voter to the number, so we know every single person that got a ballot, what number they were, when they were mailed it, what type of ballot it was. So if it's returned back, and that there are 2 ballots in an envelope with one number, both of those will get rejected. So that's very, very important. Late ballots, not signed ballots, and 2 ballots in an envelope. Then once you sign that signature envelope, you put it in the larger one. And the larger one is with the identifying number on it. And that's the envelope where it's going to have your name, your address, your party affiliation, because we need to separate these when they come back to my office. So we are expecting when they come back, they get stamped in. They also get recorded in the voter registration system so that there cannot be another ballot issued. Once your ballot is issued under your name and your identifying number, you cannot get another ballot. The system will not allow it. So that's very important as well. There's a lot of safety checks that we do in terms of trying to find any discrepancies or errors, and we're constantly running reports so that everything balances in terms of the hard copy ballots versus our report. And then the ballots are all turned over to the registrar of voters for counting and check off before the election.
What is the deadline for mailing a ballot?
Well,
back?
Again, if you're reliant on the U.S. postal system, you want to get that in as soon as possible. Ballots can be counted if they're received by 8 p.m. on election day.
Okay.
So just be mindful of that. We have the drop boxes. We'll be checking the drop boxes all day on Tuesday. And we want to make sure that every ballot that is dropped off or mailed in gets counted.
So unlike tax day, where it's got to be stamped by a certain date, right, July 15th this year, April 15th.
Every state is different, but in the state of Connecticut, your ballot has to be received by 8 p.m. on election day in order to be counted.
So on the positive side, we will know who all of the candidates are by 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Not with 10.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Not this year.
I just upset all three guests on it.
No, that's going to be one of the things I think the state has to figure out, because they have been talking about the possibility of allowing ballots to start to be counted before election day. And people have talked about confidentiality. But what people don't understand is there are 2 envelopes that the absentee ballot counters have to open. That process takes a huge amount of time, just opening the envelopes. That's not even putting the ballot itself in the tabulator. So the whole process of opening is very boring task, but they also have to make sure there's a signature on the envelope. They have to make sure that the ballot is in the envelope. They're counting the outer envelopes and the inner envelopes to make sure they match. If the number's off, then that means they have to go and research what happened. Did somebody not put in an inner envelope? Is there a ballot that wasn't put in? Were there 2 ballots in? So it's a lot more than you think. It's not just simply taking a bunch of ballots and opening up. It's 2 envelopes. Then you have to check the information and that it's all correct.
Well, I think the message here is get your ballot in early.
Yes.
So, and Ronni, do you want to read? We have a comment from one of our super fans. Do you want to read the comment, Ronni?
Well, my husband here says, I'm not sure what this is in response to. I think it's because many people feel it's unsafe to enter a public place to cast their ballot in person, regardless of social distancing efforts or even guarantees. People should not have to feel they cannot safely cast their ballots. So that was in response to why are people being permitted to vote by absentee ballot rather than, even with social distancing, having them go to a polling place. And
can I add one more thing just before we go? Sorry, Rob. We have an election hotline. So if you do not receive your ballot by, let's say, Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, and you want to call, the phone number is 860-561-7458. But please give it till next week for the ballots to get to you.
What's that number again, Essie?
561-7458.
7458. Okay, 860-561-7458. I put that in the chat, so anybody watching this will hopefully see it.
And we have a lot of information on our website, so
there we go.
Feel free to go there as well.
Awesome. All right, this is perfect. It's 6:59. Like, this is the crispest one yet. We've landed at exactly an hour. So any last comments from anybody? Ronni?
No, I'm good. Other than, it's going to be, we're kind of dealing with a brave new world in everything that we do, and no activity is the same this year as what we're used to. So I guess I really just urge everyone to be patient with our town officials who are doing the best job that they possibly can to make this run as smoothly as possible. And we can do this, but we all need to do it together.
Patrice, Beth, any last words?
Yeah, I do want to thank the town. Well, first of all, I want to thank the citizens, because the majority, almost everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody has been very, very kind and compassionate and understanding. They're calling with great questions, and we're doing the best that we can to handle the large volume of phone calls that we are getting. And I also want to thank the different town departments. We've had tremendous, right? I mean, we started back in February planning for this, and when we thought the primary was going to be in April. So emergency services, public safety, the health department, the town manager, the town council, everybody has been tremendously supportive. And so please know that the citizens of West Hartford need to know this is a complete town effort, and that everybody's on board and supportive to try to make this the best and safest election that we can possibly make it under the circumstances.
Right.
All righty.
And I would say for my closing that we're still accepting applications for people to work at the polls.
Yeah.
So if you would also like to be the capacity monitor in particular, that's outside. You get to be outside all day. You do get paid. So if you are 16-year-olds can apply for that job. You can do it from our website. You can send in an application online, and we're also looking for absentee ballot counters. So there's still some job opportunities that we would love to open up to the public.
Outstanding. All righty. We are about a minute long, but I think we're okay. Essie Labrot, Patrice Peterson, Beth Kyle, thank you all very, very much for coming on. We're greatly appreciated. For Ronni Zimbler-Newton, I'm John Lyons, and we will see you next week.